Dear Class 12, it's been long time since we have met. I hope all of you are studying really hard, and a piece of advice from my side that don't be nervous. Things are going to be very well, and you're certainly going to perform very well in the English core paper. My best wishes are always there with you. So with that, I move over to chapter number 21, The Invisible Man, which was the worry of many of you. Many of you were constantly asking me to post the videos from chapter number 21 to 28, the epilogue. So here we are, chapter number 21 in Oxford Street. This is the chapter. Let's have a quick recap. In the previous chapter, we learned that how Griffin was successful to be invisible, and now in this chapter, he is quite happy with this boon, which turns out to be a curse. That is the boon of invisibility. He had high expectations and he was expecting that he would be really happy when he would be invisible. But as the saying goes by Ruskin Bond, that life seldom turns out as we expect it to be. We work hard, devotedly, and besides, pay heavily to achieve something. We are elated on our achievement, but soon we realize that our achievement is not short of disadvantages. So every achievement has got some disadvantages. Similarly, Griffin, even though he was struggling for so many years to be invisible, but now he was able to realize that invisibility had so many problems. Problem number one, he was unable to see his own feet while walking. Problem number two, it was really cold and surviving, struggling to survive without clothes, so difficult. And then dogs could sniff him. People, while walking, they ran into him, stepped on him, and he had to be, continually, he had to be on guard to avoid accidental contacts. A dog smelled him and began to chase him. And it even, went to the extent of the fact that Salvation Army, a band, army band, Salvation Army was coming over. It was like a procession. And this procession had so many people, and a couple of sharp-eyed children who were there in this procession, they started to chase the ghost feet. Ghost feet means, I would like to clear it, that they were unable to see any person, only the marks of the foot, and they named it as ghost feet they were able to see. And they started chasing the feet, and they also drew the attention of elders towards that. So all the people, many of them, the adults, they who were participating in this Salvation Army procession, their attention were diverted and they started chasing the ghost feet, as it is given in the last paragraph of this chapter. Then came men and boys running, first one and then others, and shouting as they ran. Finally, Griffin, as he was running, something saves him. These people would have, continued chasing the ghost feet. The thing which saves him is that the attention of these people is diverted in the direction of his lodging. In the previous chapter, if you remember, he had put his house on fire. So these people, their attention is diverted, and the house is it was there on fire. And instead of chasing the feet of the ghost feet, they start looking at the house. One thing I would like to tell you that before putting his house on fire, as you must be remembering, Griffin posts his checkbook and the three diaries at an address in Great Portland Street, because he collects the three diaries later on as he goes to Iping village for the sake of being visible from invisible. As again, I would like to tell you that Invisible Man is the story of an unsuccessful scientist who was unable to reverse the formula of invisibility. First, he became invisible, but unfortunately, he was unable to make himself visible later on. So, this phase, chapter number 21, ends. Chapter number 22 in the Emporium again tells us how difficult life was for Griffin. Snowfall, surviving without clothes in such a cold weather with snowfall, snow falling on him all the time. He had no refuge, no appliances, no human being in the world in whom he could have some faith, trust. So he was lonely, weather stuck, without food, without accommodation. And he was able to realize by this time that invisibility was really a problem. And he was tired of it and wanted to get rid of it soon. So what he decided to do, that as surviving without food, clothes and refuge would be tough, so he entered a departmental store called Ominum's, and he decided that he would be stealing some clothes, masks and things, other essential things which could make him kind of visible so that he could have a normal life. And with this intention, he enters the departmental store. He waited for it to close, and in night he entered this place and started looking for gloves, trousers, socks, jackets. He even enjoys, hot coffee and cold meat. After all, he's a human, and the bare necessities a human require, the same, are his requirements. Finally, soon he is asleep on a heap of quilts. He wanted that he should be visible and come out of this place. But as he was tired, hungry, so after having his meal and coffee, he sleeps on the heap of quilts in the departmental store Ominum's only. Soon he's haunted by a horrible dream. This is basically his guilty conscience. If you remember, his father committed suicide because he stole his money. And he did not even feel very sorry at the death of his father. So now this guilty soul leads to this nightmare, where he sees first, his landlord with his sons, and then that old lady, who was looking for the cat, if you remember. And finally, Griffin was also able to see in his dream that his father's grave suddenly opening up and people were trying to put him inside that forcibly. So all that is basically his guilty self, which turns out, which comes in front of him as a nightmare, a bad dream. Finally, he gets up next morning and the workers of the store, they come report on duty, and he's almost on the verge of being, he's being caught because the workers could see him as he was wearing clothes. So he removed his clothes finally to be invisible. So all the plans he made before entering Ominum's, they were all of no use. He wanted to be visible, have a normal life, but this time He had to again remove his clothes, otherwise, he would have been caught by the workers of Ominums and he would have been handed over to the police. So he removes his clothes and moves out of the store. And all his expectations and what all he was thinking, dreams he had about having a normal life, those are all shattered. Chapter number 23. Before we start this, I would like to tell you that questions can be asked to you like this, that what is the importance of Drury Lane in the life of Griffin? How important is the chapter in the Emporium? And do you think that Oxford Street plays a significant role in the development of the plot of the novel? So the idea is that you should be knowing these chapters. I mean the summary thoroughly. Don't want to scare you, but summary you should be knowing. So over to the chapter in Drury Lane. If you remember, Griffin, he was telling the story to Kemp, who had already informed the chief of police, Colonel Eddy, as he wrote a letter to him that he was sheltering the invisible man. But Griffin continued with his story, and in all these chapters, he's telling the story to Kemp. So he continues with his story. And he tells Kemp that soon he realized the disadvantages of invisibility, having no clothes or shelter. And as he was on the streets, he was worried about snow, rain, and of course, dust settling on his skin would make him more or less visible. And the food eaten by him could be seen till the time it was absorbed. So many problems. He suffered from cold, constant cold, and he happened to sneeze anytime. So he was actually tired of this invisibility. So here in Drury Lane, he was able to find a shop as he moved towards the slums of Great Portland Street. This shop, again, it was having all sort of outfits, dark glasses. So an idea comes to his mind that he was unable to do anything at Ominum. So this shop was full of clothes, masks, wigs, and other things which could help him to be visible. Even though when he would be visible, he would not be very, very normal looking, but at least he could have a normal life. So he decided that he should be taking things from this shop, but the owner of this shop was an attentive man. He could, hear the footsteps, even though the shopkeeper was unable to see any person, but he was able to feel the presence of someone around him because he was an alert man. He started investigating the noise, as every time Griffin tried to move in the shop looking for things of his requirement, the attentive shopkeeper was looking here and there, trying to find out who was there. And he took out a revolver and started locking the doors of his shop. His house was also connected to this. And definitely Griffin was quite angry with this over-alert shopkeeper. And as we know that he's a violent person, he decides to punish this man who was a hurdle. He could not change, he could not wear the things he wanted to wear and do all sort of makeup, the masks, dummy noses, and wigs, which would make him visible because this alert shopkeeper would never allow him to do so. So he tied the shopkeeper in a sheet as a punishment, and finally he was able to change his clothes appearance. Basically, he was able to wear clothes, and he was finally visible. Even though he was really mean to the shopkeeper, He tied him in the sheet and after that did not even care to bother what happened to him. Kemp also says that tied him up in a sheet. Such a mean thing, but Griffin had no other option, it seems. Finally, he is visible and happy. And this is the point. He decides to go to Iping village, this small village where he would start his experiments to be visible again. But those villagers, they were really curious people and they poked their noses in his matters. One more thing is there that you need to prepare a note on a Whit Monday. The celebrations of Whit Monday it all goes on in so many chapters. You can collect details from the chapters which are given, but you can please note down that Whit Monday is also known as Pentecost, Pentecost, Pentecost Monday, which is also known as Monday of the Holy Spirit, is celebrated by Christians. People can be baptized, Baptized, during this time, and they wear white clothes. So this information you can write on somewhere, and apart from that, you can just collect information that how people of the Iping village, they celebrated Whit Monday. A question can be asked to you from that. So now over to the chapter, The Plan That Failed. Kemp was listening to the story of Griffin, yet he noticed that some people, obviously the police, Colonel Eddie, they were coming over to his house. Kemp tries to attract the attention of Griffin. One more significant thing is that Griffin had mentioned about Marvel to Kemp. He had been telling, since the time he had met Kemp, he had been telling him continuously of the tramp who had stolen his 3 diaries and his money. And he has also told Kemp that the tramp was in the custody of police. It was very, very essential for him to find him because his 3 diaries were there with him. So this is important because this information he does not share with anyone else. So Griffin continues with his story. He is he's unaware of the fact that Kemp has betrayed him. He has cheated him by writing a letter, by informing the police. And finally, sounds are heard by him, and he's wearing the dressing gown of Kemp. If you remember, he was given this by Kemp. He soon realized that he was cheated and he removes the dressing gown of Kemp. Eddie comes to the room, but before anything could happen, the front door slams violently. And we learn that Griffin escapes because he realizes that he has been cheated. Kemp had informed police because Kemp is a very positive character, as I keep on telling you. He is a very positive scientist, quite a constructive set of rules he has, and he's in favor of humanity. And as Griffin explained, Kemp and Eddie, they are there together. Kemp informs Eddie that Griffin was homicidal. He wanted to kill human beings. He wanted to have a reign of terror. He wanted to kill as many humans as possible because he nurtured hatred for humanity. And in other words, he should be captured soon. And Kemp suggests ways to Eddie, that dogs could be put on alert because dogs could sniff him. He also suggests that powdered glass could be put on the streets, roads. Common people should be on watching for their food items. The food items should be locked. Kemp does not want that Griffin should be anyway successful in developing, starting a reign of terror, because that would mean the end of humanity. So we come to know as Griffin escapes from Kemp's house, he hides in the thickets of Hinton Dean. Hinton Dean was a place which was like a unresided by any person. Thickets, bushes were there, and he hides himself over there. So chapter number 26 starts the Wicksteed's murder. This is an important chapter because it again highlights how violent was Griffin. And we come to know that in this chapter, all the people of Burdock, they were put on alert. Men could be seen, walking with guns, clubs, and dogs. Policemen were taking care of lanes. They were highly alert. And Invisible Man was really, really frustrated that he had to remain hidden in the thickets of Hinton Dean. So, at the time of afternoon, he comes out from his hiding place and finds a man, Mr. Wicksteed. He doesn't know Mr. Wicksteed. He's a stranger for him. Wicksteed, we are told, he was a man of around 45 to 46-year-old. And he was going back to his house for midday meal. And Griffin, as he comes out from his hiding place, he was really angry at Kemp's betrayal. So he takes out his frustration on Wicksteed and murders him. All this is witnessed by a schoolgirl. And that's all. And by the end of this chapter, we learn that he is in a state of frustration. And in the fields, some of the farmers in the afternoon, they could hear that a sound, a voice around sunset, was heard, and the sound was at times wailing, laughing, sobbing, groaning. That is Griffin, who is frustrated. He is unable to believe that Kemp has cheated him, but now he's ready for revenge. So the next chapter begins, the siege of Kemp's house. This chapter is important because we learn that Kemp receives a threatening letter from Griffin. Griffin writes a letter from this place, Hinton Dean. And the letter reads that the reign of terror has started and Kemp had cheated him. So the Invisible Man is going to murder him. And Griffin sends this letter unstamped. So Kemp has to pay for this delivery. Kemp instructs his housekeeper to lock all the doors and windows and gets his revolver ready. He writes a note to Eddie and sends it through his servant. His servant, is caught by Griffin and he comes to know about the entire plan. What is written by Kemp in the letter is he writes this letter for Eddie, in which he writes that the Invisible Man wanted to murder him because he was angry with him. But he would not run away from his house. Rather, he would be a bait. He would just let the Invisible come to his house to kill him. But the police should be very careful and arrest him. This way is, Kemp is making Griffin more angry because Griffin grabs hold of the maid and reads the letter. So this is the second time Kemp cheats him. And we learn that Eddie comes to Kemp's house because he gets the letter and informs Kemp that Griffin has read the letter and all that. And then he decides, again, there are certain questions in this novel is unable to answer. Then Eddie decides that he would have to go back to the police station to get a little bit of more help, dogs, maybe constables. So he tells Kemp to give his revolver to him. As he moves to the yard, a voice asks him that where was he going, and just tells him to go back. At that, Eddie fires towards the direction of the voice, and in return, the voice of the invisible man, as it's been told, he shoots him and Eddie falls down. So, after some time, this is how, this end of Eddie's character is given to us. And then the two constables, along with the maid, come. One policeman carries an axe, and another one is having a poker. A fight takes place between Griffin and the policeman, and the policeman tries to even Griffin grabs hold of the axe of one of the policemen, and as the fight takes place between policeman and Griffin, they are successful in, with the help of their poker, they are successful in, putting down his axe, and fight takes place between them. Griffin was breaking the house of Kemp with his axe, breaking the doors, windows, shutters as he's violent. We know that already. So this chapter ends like this. In chapter number 28, Mr. Hilas, a new character who just comes for a short duration of time. He was Kemp's neighbor. He never believed in Invisible Man, but this time he saw everything with his own eyes. So he had to believe that Invisible Man exists. Kemp runs from his house and asks Hilas to help him, but Hilas never opens the door. So, because he is afraid that if he will open the door to help Kemp, then Invisible Man will enter his house. Mr. Hila says, "You can't come in," shutting the bolts. "I am very sorry if he's after you, but you can't come in." So Kemp is denied any help by his neighbor. So Kemp starts running on the road, shouting, asking common people to help him. He says Invisible Man was coming. The Invisible Man, the navies, the army people, they were repairing the road, and Kemp informs them that the Invisible Man was there and he was after his life, he was chasing him. So the navies, they get alert, and by this time the Invisible Man grips the throat of Kemp. The navies, the workers who are there by the roadside, they attack Griffin by their spades and shovels, and they really attack him hit him very hard. Blow after blows are there, and finally a voice could be heard crying for mercy, mercy. This is the voice of the Invisible Man. The blood-stained spades could be seen because the navies, they attacked him with spade. Kemp does not want, he never wanted that Invisible Man should be killed or he should be hurt very badly, but anyhow, he's really hurt. He's on the verge of death. He is taken to Jolly Cricketers, but that is of no use. He dies. And we learn that when he dies, slowly and slowly, he starts becoming visible. And we learn that crowds, assemble. People assemble. And they see that a man who is around 30, he was all over bruised and his body was broken. His hair and brows were white, not grey with age, but white with the whiteness of albinism. We know that Griffin he was an albino. His appearance was also one of the reasons for invisibility. He wanted to avoid people because people made fun of his looks. So this chapter ends with the death of Griffin, and as he dies, so he gets visible. Kemp really feels sorry on his death because he feels that he was such a genius, the Invisible Man. Griffin was such a genius. This should not be, it's not a very good end for him. So the novel ends with the epilogue, which means the ending, in which we learn that Marvel opens an inn and names it as Invisible Man. And he opens this in near Port Stowe. And Marvel now has a new introduction. He is a landlord known as a rich person. He is still a bachelor, and he never tells anyone any secret about the three diaries of the Invisible Man. And if anyone asks him about the money, so he says, I'm blessed. I somehow got this money. He never tells the truth to anyone. When Kemp comes to inquire about the truth, then Marvel denies that he has the three diaries. All the time, we know, the readers know that he has these diaries. On Sundays, Marvel opens these diaries, and before trying to read the formula of invisibility, he closes all the doors and windows of his inn and then tries to read these diaries because he also wants to be invisible. But he does not understand anything. So, this is how the novel ends. I hope all these chapters are clear to you. With that, I end this video. Bye bye. See you in my next video.